I've seen the worst, and there is nothing left for me to hate, so I can lay me down, my brothers, on the ground. I bled today until Coyote comes to raise me up and carries me
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Scottish Rugby Podcast, brought to you by the Scottish Rugby Blog. I am Cammy Black, back after a little wee hiatus. You might notice a slightly different background tonight. I'm in a new house. Hey. I'm actually in the kids' playroom. Only place I can set up at the minute. So I have all manner of random stuff. I've got a small doll here. It's my co-host for this evening.
Have you got one of your? Remember, you had the kids' keyboard when we done the theme tunes. Have you got that
there? I'm just wondering. I've got a drum. I've got a Paw Patrol drum.
Yes.
But we'll see where the evening takes us, John. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. Joining me, and he's chipped in him before I've introduced him. It's the one and only John Anderson. Good evening, John.
I'm obviously high on the power of having hosted last time out. I'm just not respecting the decorum of being a guest again. You
steered the ship masterfully this time.
Yeah, no disasters for a change.
In that we didn't get an email from Glasgow Warriors about misinformation on ticketing prices, and we weren't banned from Facebook.
I mean, basically, it was like I properly adulted it, really.
The bar for success was set fairly low. I kind of feel like we did. Because
I was getting warnings from Ian as well beforehand, and I was kind of trying to describe it as being like a substitute teacher, and he just had no respect for me whatsoever. But he behaved, so thanks, Ian.
The problem is that you got him to call you John instead of Mr. Anderson. That's always the mistake the substitute teacher makes.
Yeah. I mean, next time I do it, I'll change my tag on here just to really emphasise my authority.
Keep them in line. We are live at the moment, and you can watch this podcast live and listen back later. So we're live at the minute on YouTube, Periscope, which is on Twitter, and Twitch, which is where all the cool kids hang out. I understand these days. We're not a gaming channel yet. At some point we'll have to work out how to play a rugby game on this.
Ian will be well up for that as well, because he's silly into his rugby games.
He is, and we're going to touch on rugby games later on in the chat anyway. You can also listen back to us on Apple Podcasts, Acast, and Spotify, and anywhere else that you can get your podcasts. You can review us on Apple Podcasts as well. Now, we've had this in the past. When we first started the podcast, we asked people to review us because it helps. It helps to boost the algorithms in Apple. I don't know how it works, but it helps in some way. And then we got into a silly thing where people started giving us 1-star reviews for a laugh. And we thought that was quite funny until we realized that wasn't helping at all. So we encourage people to stop doing that. More recently, as many regular listeners will be aware, we've entered into the rugby union culture wars, and as a result, our ratings have taken a bit of a hammering. So if you enjoy this podcast and you enjoy what we do, then please go onto Apple Podcasts and leave us a little review, because the last 2 are 1-star reviews accusing us of being too woke, and it'd be quite nice if we had something a little bit more positive on there. So you'll get nothing in return, but if you do like us, then feel free to drop us a review. That would help us greatly. Also,
I think we could give people a shout out if they gave us a decent review and said, "Guys, I love that you're so woke." I think we could, say it kind of be like.
You don't even have to say we're woke. You just have to write a nice 5-star review saying this is a nice podcast.
Yeah.
And they have sorted out the sound quality.
Which we have, yeah.
I
think there is, like, I'm thinking about like Honest Trailers, which is on YouTube, and they do he does the voice guy does like shout outs at the end, and we could do it like that,
We definitely do like that. And also, I mean, I would encourage, give us 5-star reviews, but please, try and manage expectations in the reviews as well. We're not wanting you to go crazy here. This is the best rugby podcast out there. We know that's not the case. Just say this is a decent podcast and it's very enjoyable. It's a good way to pass the time. It'll get you around to walk with a dog.
Hosted by 2 lovely, handsome gentlemen. Perfect.
That's it. That's all you need to write. Not even the handsome bit. It's hosted by 2 gentlemen. That'll do.
Two bearded gentlemen.
2 bearded, yeah, that'll do us. Sally Beveridge says we'll need to teach you what woke is first.
Right. So see us being. On you may explain, Cammy.
Wow, I was going to say woke is being nice and kind to other people, as far as I can tell.
Yeah, so kind of basically, I would probably describe it as see what we kid on rugby values are. That is what woke is meant to be.
Yes, that's a very good way of putting that.
Respect,
woke is meant to be what
and kindness for your fellow man, woman, child, dog, cat, whatever.
Treating everybody as if every day is Christmas Day.
Correct.
Yes. We also have a Patreon, which you can subscribe to for as little as £3 a month. And for that, you will get bonus episodes. You'll also get ad-free versions of the podcast. If you listen on normal podcasts, there are some adverts that are inserted in there. You'll get ad-free versions of the podcast. If you go to patreon.com/Scottish Rugby Podcast, you can sign up for that. You can also, for £5, enter the Dougie Donnelly Members Lounge. And in return, you will get your name read out on the podcast. And many people have chosen to do that. Some people, probably by accident when they've paid in dollars or euros, just because of the way the exchange rate works, have subscribed for three euros and somehow it's £5. But Craig Simpson, who's a long-term listener, thank you very much, Craig, has signed up. So well done, Craig. Thank you for joining us in the Dougie Donnelly Lounge. You're very welcome here. We are going to do Scottish Rugby's hardest players this month. I'm determined that will happen in the month of February. Now that I have moved house and that I am now here, John and I did one last month now by a couple of days. January.
Last month. Yep.
Yeah, on SRU finances. We've got ones on Rugby Sevens. We've got a couple of others kicking out. We had a Christmas special where we did a wee quiz that you can join in with. So lots of fun to be had. What we're going to try and do is on the day that match squads are announced during the Six Nations, we're going to try and do a flash 20-minute, half an hour pod. Yeah. To just kind of talk about team selection and preview individual matches. So we'll see how that goes. So the first one of those is going to go out on Thursday, all being well. That'll be available to everyone. After that, they're going to go behind the paywall, and you'll have to subscribe to Patreon to get those extra little
luring people in with our top quality content and then taking it away from them. What can we do?
Them, yeah. So the other thing we should say is you might see, if you're watching this, we are brought to you in partnership with Manscaped.com. Somebody asked me today on Twitter, and I'll get the name while I remember here, whether or not we could be sponsored by feminine products or non-male based products. So I have to give a shout out to, now where is this? I've lost the name. It's gone. It's disappeared off here. Apologies to whoever you were. You did ask it, and I can't. Jane Robertson. She said, "Any plans to be sponsored by less male-orientated products?" Now, Manscaped. Let me tell you, although there is man in the name, I don't see any reason why it couldn't be used by any gender that you choose to be. And like so, we're a woke podcast. We're open to however you choose to identify. It is a razor, a trimmer for your intimate parts. However you choose to use that is up to you. there's also I can't speak for what the ball deodorizer or the ball toner will do for you as somebody without male genitalia, without without you meat and potatoes. But it's there. Do you know? Experiment. Go wild. Buy it for you. Buy it for your male relative, your male partner, your male friends at work. Treat them to it. So it doesn't just have to be. It's not just for men. Although it is in the name.
We've said the crop reviver, as it's known, which is the ball toner. We've also said that it is very much multi-purpose and does have lots of soothing properties for other parts of your body, such as your wee fingeries if you're playing drums, or Ian's bass hands.
Yeah, if you're doing that. Good. So, we should say Valentine's Day is coming up, John, in the next couple of weeks.
It sure is.
Manscaped have got a new product. They've gone at the aftershave market, haven't they? They've got this for people that are watching home. This little wee bottle is called Refined Cologne. So even though you're going to be locked indoors, treat your better half. Could be a man, could be a lady. We don't know. We don't discriminate here. Treat them to a wee surprise on Valentine's Day. Get all dressed. Pretend you're going out for the evening. Spritz on a bit of this. Refined by Manscaped. It says, a modern statement of refinement and masculinity. This clean and manly scent will inspire confidence to conquer all. I can't speak to that. I don't think an aftershave can physically do that. I know they are giving us money to sponsor that, but it smells nice. Do you know why not give it a go? If you go to manscaped.com and enter the code SRP, you will get 20% off plus free shipping on any of their products, be that ball toner for your weary drum or bass hands, or for any other purpose, or a trimmer. Go and give it a go and see how you get on. Let's go and move on then, John. We're going to do some. Should we strip straight into the news?
Straight into the news, yeah, sounds good.
We have been off air for a week after John manfully stood in for me.
It should be said it wasn't an enforced break either. It wasn't like we were, put under some sort of 1 week quarantine where, we're, getting threatened by people to not speak again.
Yeah, it wasn't like someone said, you can't do the podcast again, lads.
Yeah, you're banned for a week, guys.
Yeah. We'll start with some good news. So since we've been off air, Bill Matter has signed on for... Now, did they announce the contract length? I think they have said it's a 1-year deal, haven't they?
I didn't notice, to be honest. I just assumed they wouldn't. So, but I mean, inevitably it's going to have to be a one-year deal. I think everyone is so surprised that he signed on again.
It is, yeah. I mean, I think it just is the current market that there's nowhere else to go, or you're not going to get your best deal by signing elsewhere.
I think as well, he's come back from lockdown and he looks very, very much like he was obviously injured straight after, and he kind of looks like he maybe hasn't taken his fitness work as seriously during lockdown as maybe others have. He's certainly not been quite at the level he had been previously, so he's maybe played himself out of a few contracts, potentially.
Yeah, I mean, they've said that they've extended his contract. Now, by our reckoning, that wording means that it's a year.
Extension's a year, yeah.
Extension's a year by our patented interpreting the SRU press release.
Decipherer.
And we'll come back to Bill Matter in a minute. Danny Wilson said something interesting. Now, we got to the bottom of why the SRU are not saying how long people have signed on for, and it makes perfect sense. Danny Wilson was speaking to the press and said, effectively, it's player's choice. Players don't want anybody to know how long they're signing on for. It suits the clubs and it suits the SRU because then you don't have other teams sniffing around in the last year of their contract. Some players can waive the right to that, as Hamish Watson did and said it's 3 years. But it's effectively a GDPR thing, so far as we can tell.
Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, I think we were a bit. So I'm a bit surprised actually at the thing about we don't want other clubs sniffing around, because all these players are represented by agents who know fine well how long their contract is, and if they happen to just mention to someone down south, oh well, Joe Bloggs here might be available in a year or two, hint hint, nudge nudge, wink wink, then it's hardly bulletproofing the whole situation, is it? But I get the guys don't want it out in the press, so be it.
Yep. But come back to Bill Matter. I mean, you could tell from his comments he's obviously really pleased with the way he's been looked after and managed at Edinburgh. His family's very happy, very settled in Edinburgh. The strength and conditioning guys have got a program tailored to him, and the nutritionists and everything's tailored to him there. So there was certainly in the quotes an appreciation of the way he's been managed at Edinburgh compared to what he might experience in, say, France or the Premiership.
Yeah. No, I think from the moment he arrived in Scotland, he has been very well looked after by. I'll give the Edinburgh mob a degree of credit, a smidgen of credit, if you will. He's been very well looked after over there, and he's obviously very settled. So fair play to him. Again, does raise raise that comment about is it a lack of ambition? I think no with Mata, actually. I think he will be able to pick his club, and I think he is biding his time. And I think you will see players, again, we'll speak about one of them in a second, who are maybe picking up smaller contracts just with a view to, let's ride this year out. Let's see what clubs are actually going to have finance-wise in a couple of seasons' time, and see where you actually want to go, rather than just taking maybe a substandard contract at, I don't know, say a Worcester Warriors or something.
Yeah. The other, I suppose, on that one-year deal thing, the big surprise, I think, was that Leone Nakarawa has gone to Ulster on a one-year deal. It seemed to take Glasgow Warriors by surprise, because the official Glasgow Warriors Twitter feed said, as announced by Ulster, Leone Nakarawa has had a one-year deal. So, I mean, we may be reading too much into that tweet, but it would suggest that they were taken slightly by surprise that he's gone. Now, how would Rory compare it to? He said the second season's, it's a difficult second turn with Glasgow.
Yeah. He said Mark 2, he said something along the lines of Mark 1 Leone Nakarawa was Glasgow's greatest ever signing, and Mark 2 sadly goes along in with I'm going to struggle, big tack, so we'll call him. He kind of goes into that. And I think actually I would go a step further than that, because Naya Navarro, there we go, I'll spat it out. For all his flaws in his one season at Glasgow, he did do things. He ran over the top of people a lot. He was pretty big and noticeable at times.
Yep.
Now, Mark II at Glasgow has been a complete, aside from scoring with his first touch down in Sale, he has done absolutely as little as could possibly have been done for a rugby player since that day. For the duration of his contract, he has done nothing. So it's really disappointing. But there's stuff like the Glasgow tweet was interesting, because I don't think all has necessarily been well there. And Danny Wilson, for all his, I've criticised him for his tactics and stuff like that, but he's very good at his press stuff. He keeps his self to himself pretty well, but he let slip a few times that maybe the communication between him and Nakarawa wasn't necessarily as good as it should have been, and he was kind of caught off guard a few times by things that were happening. So I don't know. I think it's maybe both parties have kind of come to an agreement to say, do you know what? Nah, it's really not worked out this time, big man. Let's off you go.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose I kind of opined at the time on Twitter that it seems unlikely that Ulster are going to be paying him more than Glasgow would be able to pay him. Yeah, if he'd gone to the Premiership or he'd gone to France, he might go, fair enough, he's gone for more money. But at the same time, I think, like you were saying, he's not made that many appearances for Glasgow. Maybe Glasgow don't need him as much.
That's a different question altogether. I think a fit Leone Nakarawa, any team in the world needs, really, and Glasgow especially, given that the absolute lack of locks and particularly back row, destructive ball carriers at back row. I think Glasgow probably could use a fit Nakarawa, but they can't afford a fit Nakarawa. And that's the issue. So if he goes to Ulster and tears up trees, we'll all be standing there going, what a stupid decision getting rid of him or letting him go. No, I think actually I'm going to backtrack slightly, because we always talk about this phrase, and Scottish rugby fans are particular. This isn't even a hands in the ruck. We'll get to that later. Scottish rugby fans are particularly good at saying, "Oh, why didn't we keep this person? Why didn't we keep them here?" It's like, because contracts don't work like that. People have freedom to go and seek employment elsewhere. Nakarawa has the right to go and work for Ulster if he didn't like what he was getting offered by Glasgow. So why didn't we keep him here? Well, he might not have wanted to be here anymore.
Yeah, he might not have enjoyed he might have come back and decided it wasn't what he thought it once was, and the old band have moved on.
You couldn't blame him just now. Actually, I mean, things are a bit rough over at Glasgow. I'd heard someone say recently, Al Kellock was talking about the culture at Glasgow and maybe it not being quite what it once was.
Well, that's unusually candid for Al Kellock.
Yes, quite.
That's quite telling. In other Glasgow news, Jamie Batty's come back.
He has. Out of nowhere as well. That was
yeah.
I mean, normally with these signings, you kind of get a wee lead in and you sort of think, all right, okay, I can see that happening. But it was just out of nowhere because he only went to Bath
he eventually
10 minutes ago.
Walked out of Edinburgh, went to Bath for the end of the season, then's coming back up to Glasgow again.
Maybe just fancied a holiday.
Yeah, it's nice down in Bath.
It's one way to get a wee trip elsewhere. I have it's essential travel for work, so he maybe just fancied a wee trip to Bath.
Good way to get around the rules. The big news though out of Glasgow is that George Horne has signed on again, which Ian is obviously delighted about. Now that, again, applying our Scottish Rugby Podcast guide to SRU contract lengths, suggests it's a year extension rather than anything longer, which is maybe surprising for his age. But at the same time, when we were talking in previous podcasts about showing ambition, maybe he's taken a look and thought, do you know what? I'm behind Ali Price at Glasgow. Doesn't look like Ali Price is necessarily going anywhere, or what we don't know. Maybe Ali Price will. I think someone suggested that Ali Price's contract is maybe up in a year as well.
2022, yeah.
So they're both contracts at the same time. He gets a chance in 2022 to go. Look, if Ali Price goes off to France or England or whatever to make his money, then I'm first choice. Or Ali Price stays put, and I can move on and develop my game elsewhere. So it's a sensible move, but maybe not surprised. Are you surprised it's not longer than that?
No, I'm really not. I'm surprised, full stop, actually, that he signed. A guy who is, he does what he does very, very well, and both me and Ian rate him very highly. He's 26. He's starting to move into that space where he does need to be starting for a team, and he is going to be behind Ali Price, rightly or wrongly, for there's various arguments for both, but Ali Price has definitely upped his game significantly recently, and I think that George Horne needs to be either having the season of his life next season and getting past Price, or then at that end of that season or during that season there will be decisions that get made as to, I think you're right, if Ali Price re-signs for Glasgow, George Horne goes. If Ali Price leaves Glasgow, I think George Horne probably stays. And it's, but then that's, we talk about that like there's not a third party coming into that there. And obviously the rise of Jamie Dobby could cause all sorts of problems for both of them. It happens in professional sport all the time that you think the established two are kind of fighting it out, and then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, here comes a young buck to take over the reins. And then, Finn Russell done it to Duncan Weir and Rory Jackson, so it's not the first time it would have happened.
No, so it's going to be interesting to see how that pans out. But I mean, how do you feel then, John, after January? Because I think we can safely say that Edinburgh fans were feeling fairly smug with their transfer dealings over over January. Glasgow, certainly the early days, it was worrying. There's been a lot more signings since, but it's there's nothing that kind of like sets the heart aflutter, I don't think, in the same way that like the James, Edinburgh getting James Lang, for example.
No, No, I mean the only no, absolutely right. So, I take the point that Glasgow's recruitment so far, I think it is early days, and there will be more to come. There better be more to come, I think, is what everyone's saying. But the only one that really stood out as being a good situation was Scott Cummings re-signing. I think we're all obviously very happy about that. George Horn staying was a surprise, but it's good he's staying. Batty and Duncan Weir, I mean, that summarises it really.
Yeah, it's like we said previously on the podcast. It's like going back to your ex. It's rebound. It's rebound sex essentially.
It is rebounds, and Glasgow have been dumped a lot of times.
Leonie Nakarawa is a very good example of why Glasgow should not have rebound sex.
For every Rory Jackson, there has been too many others that have maybe not worked. Although, to be fair, actually, that's been unkind, because if you think about it, guys like Sean Lamont came back, Richie Vernon came back. You know, we've had guys do it in the past. Chris Cussiter as well, and Nico has been quite good as well. DTH was decent. So Nakarawa's possibly standing out as I really shouldn't have. I really shouldn't have texted that girl, but I did.
I shouldn't have had that extra glass of rosé.
Oh, that wee extra sherry tipped me over the edge, and whoops, it is.
I was sat with a bottle of rosé watching Thelma and Louise, and I picked up the phone and said, "Leonie, I missed you, pal. I've seen you update your Facebook status with a rapping to It's Complicated."
What was it on Bebo?
You over for a night of passion, and now now you've shacked up with a lad for Ulster.
Was it? Was it not in Bebo that it was down for anything or something like that?
I only used Bebo very briefly for that.
That's because you're old, bro. That's because you're old. Yeah, me and Jerry Hogg were sporting the dodgy lids on Bebo years back.
So there we are. That's where we are with news. We'll move on. Six Nations is starting this weekend, which no fans obviously. It's a difficult one to preview this Six Nations, John.
Yes,
it's got no fans. There's a lot of talk about making your own atmosphere, as there was in the autumn. That's something Rory Sutherland's come out and said today. We saw in the autumn, you take fans out of the equation, you take the atmosphere out of the equation, you take it changes the dynamics of a game, and it changes what you're walking into as a player. And it's not like this isn't an unknown now, because the players have had the autumn to get used to that. They've played big international matches in front of empty stadiums. So I think going into it now, they know it's much more of a 50-50 encounter. So Scotland going down to Twickenham this weekend shouldn't hold any concern for Scotland, because in the way that it would do, because they're not playing against the Twickenham crowd, such as it is. It's not you're going to France to play in to play on a training pitch, essentially.
Yeah. It's like it's the same as it's the same as the atmosphere at a pre-season friendly, where you're going along to play big teams, and there's no fans there, there's no atmosphere. It's down to you to make your atmosphere. And you look at as much as there's been a lot of research done into the influence of crowds on officiating and things like that, and ultimately you're more likely to get decisions when you play at home, because you generally have the ball more, you're generally making play more, but ultimately just more decisions do go your way when you've got massive crowds shouting and hollering, and it's just human nature, and nobody's saying that's wrong. I'm not at all saying that's wrong. but it's a fact, and that's no longer an influence.
We've all been at games where they've shown something on the big screen and the crowd have reacted,
going mad.
And then all of a sudden the referee's asking for a review.
Yep.
We've all been at games like that, but it doesn't happen in the same way. You don't have replays on the big screen. They have the replays on the big screen for the referee to watch them, but they don't have it for the benefit of the fans. So that doesn't happen.
Yeah, and it's almost the fans drawing the attention to the replay is what sometimes catches it out, because you've seen yourself, there's been replays put up before that people, referee is concentrating on refereeing the game. So
yeah. And I'm thinking of the 2018 Calcutta Cup game at Murrayfield, where Scotland won comfortably, and being there in the, every single maul that Scotland won, and they won a lot that day, demolished the English maul that day, was absolutely celebrated as though they'd scored a try by the crowd.
Yeah.
Just on that day, the crowd were completely in sync with the team and celebrated absolutely everything they did. And I think without that, it creates a different energy. And I don't think you then get the ebbs and flows of a match in the same way. I don't think the momentum swings are as pronounced.
Yeah. No, I think that's a very interesting point, and it will be. I think with the autumn tests were probably, but by the very nature of them, because it was kind of the first time we'd done international rugby without crowds, and I think there was a lot of kind of novelty to it. But a lot, as you say, all these players have played. Well, all these players, apart from the five guys in the England squad from Saracens who haven't played since like 2016 or something. It feels like
they got beaten by the Ealing Trail final.
They did, yeah. We mentioned that a couple of weeks ago. We laughed heartily at it. But the players are more experienced at that now, and it is about you hear all the guys talking about generating your own atmosphere, generating your own kind of buzz, and ultimately it does come down to, as you say, it's much more 50-50 because you've got 15 guys in either team just shouting at everything.
Yeah, plus the bench as well, and that's what Scotland did quite well against Wales, but they didn't seem to do it in the same way again in the rest of the autumn in France. So Scotland, we've got. I'm going to come to the squad in a minute. I've got a couple of people who've posted questions in the comments, and we'll pick those up in a second. Start up against England, then Wales at Murrayfield, France away, and the good news today is that the French government have allowed travel for the rugby. Although it seems that Finn Russell's going to be with the Scotland camp for the whole way through, because otherwise he'd have to quarantine for 2 weeks if we went back to
Yeah, which is, I mean, that's good news for us. Yeah, I saw his interview actually earlier on with the SRU, and it was very interesting to watch. Actually, he was talking a wee bit about that, and just being very Finn. Seems to have grown up a wee bit, which I don't believe.
Yeah, he can't have three. Well, the thing is now he can't have 3 beers, otherwise he's got nowhere to go.
He did say he was quite bored, so
well, he was juggling 2 tennis rackets in a tennis the other day.
Oh, to have the skills of that young man, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, it was interesting because the comparison with the 2 teams of England and Scotland, and I know we'll preview this properly on Thursday, but you had Billy Vanapola basically going, it's really boring. I'm in a room on my own. I have to eat on my own. We do the training. We don't see each other.
Yep. It's
really dull and boring, and it's getting to me. And then you cut to the Scotland camp, and Finn Russell's juggling 2 tennis rackets and a tennis ball.
That's what the Haribo diet will do for you, though.
Baguettes, cheese, and Haribo.
That's Haribo.
And wine, of course, the free wine he gets from, not free, he can go to the wine cellar at Racing's training ground.
Right.
It's very French, and they've got their own wine cellar, select any wine he wishes, and then it just gets docked off his wages.
You've got to ask the question as well. Like, I'm thinking about that as an employee benefit.
Deductible?
Is it tax deductible? Yeah. Does it come off before
like
tax?
childcare vouchers or AVCs?
So, but I suppose you do get things like wine club and stuff like that as part of your kind of flex benefits. So maybe that's what Finn's got.
It's France. I would imagine the wine is tax deductible.
I would imagine so. And to be honest, given what we believe he's on over there, I don't think it matters terribly.
Yes. So there's away to France, then Scotland, Ireland at Murrayfield, and then Scotland, Italy again at Murrayfield. So it's that time for Scotland to have 3 home matches. Normally, that's the time when we're more historically speaking, we've done
All right, yeah.
all right. Although last time round, 2 years ago, we didn't, because we had those awful games against Ireland and Wales.
Yeah.
It's a hard one to call. I mean, hope. We've been here before, John.
Hope springs eternal every year. Here we go again. I may have been on something last night and may have said Scotland are going to win the Six Nations. That's how crazy my hope has gone.
Oh God, Stuart Hogg. What Stuart Hogg's quote the other day was, we believe. We're not saying we're going to win the Six Nations, but we believe. And I've been here too many times, John.
You are not wrong, Cammy.
There was a video today of a woman in Malaysia doing aerobics in front of a military coup, and she didn't realize the coup was going on behind her. I thought, that's me every Six Nations. I'm that woman dancing, going, Scotland are going to win it. We're going to do really. This is our year. And there's a military coup going on behind me.
Grand Slam this year. Tommy Seymour's going to be top try scorer.
We can all blame Dougie Lowe. He says Grand Slam this year, so we can all blame Dougie when that doesn't happen. I mean, if it's going to happen, this year is not a bad year for it to happen. Although, albeit there will always be a star next to whoever wins the Grand Slam this year, which says COVID.
This is true. However, history is often written by the victors. So we will simply rub that asterisk out or put our cup of coffee over it.
Or wet here, like a bit like the 1999 Five Nations, where we still claim we're reigning champions.
Which is legit, yeah. Spot on.
Because that tournament does not exist anymore.
Yeah, so we are the champions, my friend.
The reigning champions. I mean, there was a question that came through on Twitter. I was hands in the ruck, but I might as well deal with it now because it feels like the right place to deal with this. And I'm going to I'll get the person who said this to me. They said, it's the Rugby Moaner. So you can tell it's not going to be a positive one straight off of someone called Rugby Moaner on Twitter. It said, is 4 years in a job long enough to stop experimenting and start being consistent with a team in order to let the guys form a bond, rather than going in every year wondering what players you have to get to know within a short window? Now, this is an interesting question, one we've tackled before. I'm more coming around to the view, and I think Gregor Townsend is as well, that there is something to be said for the Tuni Tombola, but you need consistency in your key positions.
Yeah.
So there is an element of horses for courses. And you need against some teams you need pragmatism. Against other teams, you can open up a little bit and you can send in your more creative players. So for example, you may want, against England, for example, it may be worth sticking in James Lang at 12 and Chris Harris at 13, because in the Six Nations, they were a very good defensive, pragmatic centre pairing. But against Italy, there's nothing. I wouldn't necessarily say there would be anything wrong with throwing Cam Redpath on at 12.
No, I totally agree. I think it ultimately comes down to how. I mean, it's basics, isn't it? How do we see our best chance of beating England? And yeah, we're probably going to be under the cosh a wee bit physically. We're probably going to have to defend a bit. We're going to need our strike runners to be efficient. So someone like Lang's probably a good balance between that. Strong big boy, decent, offers a decent ball carrying option, but also he's a decent distributor. So he probably does kind of offer the right balance for England. Whereas, as you say, Cam Redpath, if you're looking for a second distributor who's a creative attacking threat, then you may throw him, well, maybe there's not quite the physicality coming down that 12 channel that you're going to see with England, because Jones is just going to, what he's going to do. He's done it for years now. He's going to put monsters in the centre, and he's going to have, or monster at 13, you'll have Farrell at 12, and they'll just be popping the ball and running straight and true. So you're going to need somebody to defend hard.
Well, the other thing is, and this was something that Squid Rugby pointed out, and we've had a comment on our super secret Facebook group that you can join if you're a Patreon. where I'm going to try and find who posted this because they were upset with Squidge. It was Bobby McLean said Squidge claims that George Ford is the best 10 in the world, but on the basis that he is the best at playing the type of rugby that's winning games at the moment, which is a kicking game.
Yep.
And that's what Scotland have got to contend with. But I think we've also got in Stuart Hogg and Finn Russell. I think and even Ali Price to a certain extent. I think you've got 3 players who can play England at their own game with that.
Yeah, particularly I think Price's game has come on a long way in that sense, and he's being much more intelligent with his kicking. And I said recently, people talk about Finn Russell. We're going to talk about Finn Russell lots, I'm sure. But one point I want to make about him is people always talk about, right, we all remember the pass, and Glasgow fans all remember that other pass that he done that one time that, he's got such a good repertoire with ball in hand, but people forget he's probably one of the best kicking 10s as well out there. Not his goal kicking. I'm not saying that, kicking at goal, fine. But in terms of his creativity and finding space, and go back to the Twickenham game, the difference his creative kicking made in that second half, it's something that we will need to do well, and England will be very aggressive in their line speed. They'll be right up with us, and you'll see Russell will be doing those little chip kicks. He will be doing those little kind of try to nutmeg a man and then probably throw a mad pass over his head to Hoggers.
This is the thing, though. I think with Finn Russell, and it's slightly frustrating that when you speak to people who aren't Scottish about Finn Russell, and even some Scottish people, that people have an issue with him as being erratic.
Yeah,
I think he's damned by his highlight reels.
Yes.
What people expect Finn Russell to do is constantly be nutmegging players and constantly be throwing these wild miss passes and constantly kind of like doing these, outrageous crossfield kicks. But those are like once, twice a game moments that come off. The rest of the time, he's a perfectly good, solid, world-class 10. He does everything well that other 10s do well. Just people expect him to be doing more. So when he comes on and he just distributes well, like against Wales before he got injured, he came on, he distributed, he didn't do anything particularly spectacular in that game. He just passed well, moved the ball around, moved his pack around, and that's what you want from a 10. But then people are like, oh, he's not as good as people say he is. It's like, no, he's not as good as his highlight reel, but nobody is. Nobody's as good as the highlight reel.
I think there's an element as well of people forget, right? So we talk about Russell as flaky, and I think they think back to Russell 7 years ago when he made his Scotland debut. He was 21. He was 21 when he made his Scotland. He was a kid. In America, he was barely allowed to go and order 3 beers. And he made his debut in America, of course, so that's quite apt. Yeah, so it was only just legal to buy his beers. People think back then and say, oh, he's inconsistent, he's this, he's that. And I totally agree with you. I think his highlight reel, the fact that he's got a highlight reel that is as exciting as that is like spectacular. But he is judged on that level. And the thing is, I don't think he gives 2 hoots about that in the slightest. The way he kind of, he just wants to be the best player he can be. And he is, he's just amazing, isn't he, really? But he's no longer a child either. And, people need to stop judging him when he was 21 and realise just how bloody lucky we are as Scottish fans to have a player of that quality in the 10 shirt. Yeah.
I mean, so from a Scotland point of view then, in it going into this, would you advocate for that then, Joe? Because I certainly would, that you change. I think we will see a change in teams depending on the games that are being played. And I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing.
Yeah, no, we absolutely will. I think there'll be probably significant changes between the games. We're not going to see a settled core squad. I think you will see a core running through the squad, in that you obviously Hogg's your captain. He's going to play. You're going to see Russell at 10 every game unless, touch wood, anything happens there. Price is going to start at 9. The way the squad's been picked, I don't think there's necessarily that much flexibility in key positions, but there's enough that, particularly in the forwards, you're going to see a lot of changes there, probably with a view to matchups with their opposite men. And I think it's really good we're in that position, because teams that are able to consistently pick the same team over and over and over, but have no options beneath that, inevitably get to the third game of the Six Nations and have to pick Nick Grigg at centre.
That's a fair point. I mean, I think that there's an interesting debate, I think, for this rumbling on at the minute is the number 8. Now, Gary Graham's been playing very well for Newcastle Falcons.
Yep.
And when he has played for Scotland, I've liked what I've seen. I thought he's played very well for Scotland when he has done. And that debate about what... And to a certain extent, Scotland now have 2 good options at 8 in Matt Ferguson and Gary Graham. A third possibly in Blade Thompson.
Yep.
But he offers something, or at least Blade Thompson can offer something off the bench.
It's back to that thing again, though, because I think Blade Thompson's probably more. If we think of, let's compare them to great number 8s over the years. So if you think Blade Thompson is probably more in the slightly flashier, great line-out option, not a massive ball carrier, but he's a very good link man at 8. So he's a bit of a Parisi, if you will. He can play ball. I'm not saying he's as good as Parisi before we get
drop goals in the 78th minute.
Yeah, just knock it over because you can, and miss, and that was quite funny. But then the other side of that, I think Gary Graham is much more in probably what Scotland fans want to see at 8, in that kind of they want to see someone who is big, beardy, and wants to run over the top of the nearest man to him. No guile whatsoever. Like, it's basically if David Denton had a beard, right? That's what Scotland fans want to see at 8. But Matt Fagerson is the middle ground between the two. You watch Matt Fagerson carry, he knocks people down a lot. He also has the ability to play some ball. So we've got options. I think you probably will go with Graham against England, actually, and try. I think he will try and kind of go toe to toe with England. I don't know if I agree with it, but that's I'm not paid lots and lots of money by the SRU.
No. Should we try and pick a starting 15 out of the squad?
Yep.
Should we do forwards first? So your front row. I think it's fairly clear that Xander Ferguson is going to start every single game unless he's injured
for the next 10 years. Yes.
And then he'll still be 28 or something ridiculous.
Yeah. He's not a very old boy, is he? Yeah, I think Ferguson at tight head for sure. George Turner is your only legitimate option at hooker now. Yeah, in that we've called up every Scots qualified hooker that ever existed in the history of forever. I was surprised Scott Lawson didn't get a call up. I was genuinely surprised. Still time.
Still time. I'm sure he can still do a job.
Oh yeah, I mean, yeah. Then probably loose heads. You're saying, Rory Sutherland's the man in charge, isn't he? And then Ollie Kebble on the bench for me on that one. And
then you've got second row. Now, I mean, do you go with Johnny Gray? I think you go with Johnny Gray and Scott Cummings is the kind of the incumbent second row.
Yeah,
and would be the form second row as well, I guess.
Yes and no. I think it depends how you go for form, because Richie Gray put his hand up big time in those 2 games. He was. And he offers, again, it's back to that point of difference. He offers something very different. And Cummings is, again, much more flamboyant, runs amazing angles. Johnny Gray will just get through a power of work. Richie, again, is that middle ground between the two. So it's an interesting one.
There's an argument for Richie. I mean, there's a lot of people saying that Grant Gilchrist is, put his hand up.
Don't even get me started on Grant Gilchrist.
Listen. You know, Wait till we get to my hands in the ruck later on this, John. But look, people have said that he's put his hand up. Now, I don't think he's been consistent enough at international level to start ahead of the players we're talking about. And actually, I would pick Richie Gray ahead of him because I think Richie Gray has proven at international level, and I think if he's fit and back to his best, then I would go with him. On the bench, if that's the way that we go, rather than having someone like a more versatile back rower. I mean, you're starting back row. If Jamie Ritchie is over concussion, you're Richie Watson and Gary Graham probably.
Right. I think, yeah, I have to agree. What's your but though?
I can see, but is a very tight call with him and Matt Ferguson.
Yes.
I don't go. I mean, I think Blade Thompson is an option from the bench, but but I think you could easily stick Gary Graham or Matt Ferguson on the bench, and both of them can come in at 6.
Yeah, that is a consideration as well. And this is assuming he doesn't go for a bonkers 26-2 split or something.
Yeah.
Which I think
he's going to have to just stick loads of hookers on the bench at this rate.
I know. Yeah. Well, I mean, basically, when we reviewed the squads, it's hookers and fullbacks is all we've got.
Yeah.
So it might be a good tactic.
Yeah. So the backs then. So I think it's very obviously going to go Ali Price and Finn Russell 9 and 10.
Yep. We'll skip 12 just now.
We'll skip 12 for the moment. You'll definitely have. I mean, the wings is interesting. Does he go with Maitland ahead of Darcy?
No, probably not.
Do you not think so?
I can understand.
I would pick Darcy ahead. Listen, I would pick Darcy ahead of Sean Maitland. I posed the question because it's Gregor Townsend, and do we think that he goes with Sean Maitland over it?
So, okay, I retract my previous statement. I think he should go with Darcy Graham. However, the possibility of Maitland, again, talking about defence, Maitland's defence is strong. Darcy Graham does offer something. He is a tiny little.
Darcy Graham's defence is unquestionable. I haven't got a
exactly.
problem with that. But I think he's, for some reason, he's down by his size, and that's even despite the fact he's consistently punches above his weight. Yeah,
anyone that puts Matteo Bastro on their significantly large. What will I use? Will I use plat? Bottom. So I was trying to think of a referee name. I'm not Ian. I'm not going to swear. It's okay. Anyone that does that has shown he has plenty of defensive chops. I think Maitland's. I want it to be Graham so much, but it's probably going to be Maitland, and that's okay though. That's okay. Why are we sad about this?
It's because we love Darcy Graham. That's why.
We love Darcy, and his dad was on Gladiators, and that is beautiful. And he was baby Darcy in 1995.
Oh no. And then you've got we'll come to centres in a minute. Doohan on the other wing. I think that's unquestionable. And then Hog at fullback. The question then is centre. I think Chris Harris starts at 13. One, I think he deserves to start at 13 because I think he's the form 13 for Scotland at the minute. I think he had a very good autumn. I still find it difficult to understand why people have questions about him because he has shown consistently now that he is a very good 13, and people can shout about Hugh Jones all they want, but Hugh Jones is not the 13 that played against England in 2018. We'll come on to Hugh Jones in a minute, but let's not just throw Hugh Jones in because he had a good run of games back in 2019. 12 though, yes. So I think we've said it. I mean, this is where I think you might see the most rotation. Now, the way sometimes you can guess from who gets put up for press. Yeah, this is usually a game we play, to who might be in the thoughts. Now, the fact that Cam Redpath is getting a lot of coverage. Now, I think partly that's because he's in the squad. There's a story there about his dad, the fact that he hadn't committed to one where he'd been in the England squad. There's a story there, and obviously the press want to speak to him. he has been kind of quite prominent, so I'd be surprised if he wasn't involved in the matchday squad at this stage. I think it's a lot to throw an uncapped player in at 12 against England in a Calcutta Cup match, though.
Yeah, no, it is. It is. But again, this is back to the squad selection. Townsend has left himself exposed here in that he has. So I agree with you. I think Harris starts at 12. It starts at 13. No questions asked, right? And I would actually have Hugh Jones's babies. So this is like that it's clear that I feel that Harris deserves to have the shirt, even though Hugh Jones is amazing. He's not playing at 13 though, so he's a fullback these days apparently. So yeah, there was saltiness there. You can hear it. It's okay. But yeah, 12. Right. So James Lang and Cammy Redpath. I get what people say. I don't think James Lang is actually. I think he's solid. I think he's consistent. I don't think he's necessarily amazing, right? And I'm choosing my words very carefully there because I think he's a young guy who could potentially be a very good asset to Scottish rugby, but I don't think he's necessarily that good at this point in time. Cam Redpath, completely untested entity, right? Some people take to international rugby, some people don't. And then you've got the man of glass himself, Duncan Taylor. Old super dunk who, a stiff breeze, so a bad look would injure him just now, which is a shame because, again, fit Duncan Taylor at 12 is a great option, but he's not fit and he hasn't been fit for 3 years. So we're in a situation now where we're debating whether we throw in an uncapped rookie against England in a Calcutta Cup match in the first day of the Six Nations. We're not in a good place at 12 there.
No. And you haven't got, it's not even that because he hasn't called up. I'm looking at the squad list and I can't see his name. Sam Johnson's not in the squad, is he? Because
he is not in the squad, no.
He's not enough game time. And that's a COVID thing, because I think he would be in the squad were it non-COVID times and you could have a larger squad and swap players in and out. So they've had to take a smaller squad, understandably, for bubbles and reasons. But you're right, there is a weakness at 12, which until exposed to the fiery heat of Six Nations rugby, we don't know whether it's going to stand up. We don't know how that's going to go.
No.
My guess is Lang. My guess is he'll go with Lang. But he went with Taylor in the Ireland match and not Lang. So my guess with Taylor or Lang, Cammy Redpath, I don't think is going to. I think unless Cammy Redpath starts, I don't think he's going to be a bench option because I understand that he has some versatility and he has played. He has filled in at fly half and he has switched to 13 at stuff for Sale and for Bath, but it's not at international level.
Well, that's it, yeah. And again, you don't ask a guy to play out a position in his first cap if you can avoid it. And you're talking about versatility. Russell was talking again in the press about playing 10 or 12, which clearly suggests that, the bench cover is going to be Hugh Jones because you've got a 13, 15 there. Yeah.
And then you can then come as a coach, he can comfortably afford to have Jaco van der Walt.
Exactly. You've got
10 out of 10.
Yeah, you'll have Scott Steele and Jaco on the bench at 9-10 straight swap, and then you've got. And again, I think having Jaco actually, he's a good option to have because again, it's a different type of game. He is going to do different things, and if we're having to close out the game, I always think try to close out a game. I still think we should be just continuing. None of this closing up shop. We should just be continuing to let Russell run madness. But having the option to punt the ball 50, 60 metres into the corner is probably not a bad option either.
Yeah. So I think that's our assessment of where we are.
Yeah. We need 12s.
We need to send us your 12s.
Send us your 12s.
We've already raided England's.
Their cupboard is bare. We need some hookers and we need some 12s.
Someone's just while we're on air, inexplicably, someone has bought 2 throw pillows of Dougie Donnelly on our shop. That's popped up my notifications. Someone's got 2 giant Faces of Dougie Donnelly.
What picture is it of Dougie again?
It's my artistic impression of his of a promo photo of him from BBC Sport back in the day.
Amazing.
Yeah.
I can confirm that it was not me who has bought these.
No, you've been on. Just as we're on here, as you've made a sale on Redbubble. I made a sale on Redbubble for a while. I wonder who's bought what. So someone's brought up two throw pillows of Dougie Donnelly. Apologies if I have ruined anyone's birthday surprise by revealing that.
We have not revealed the true identity of them yet. So
no, it doesn't tell me who's bought them. So that's fine. That shall remain between the purchaser and Redbubble.
It's a really good situation actually. That it's kind of like that's how discreet we are. Like if your thing is to buy Dougie Donnelly pillows, then you've got no judgment from us. And you'll not get your name read out in the podcast. No. But if you want to tell us it was you, please.
Yeah, let us know. Write in. Tell us, what did you buy the Dougie Donnelly throw pillows? John, I'm going to predict Scotland will win 3 games.
Right.
The Six Nations. That's where I am with things. I think there are 3. I think they've got 3 wins in them. I think the other 2 are probably a step too far.
What are your 3 wins? Italy, obviously, because
Italy, Wales, and either Ireland or France.
Right. Okay. So
I think there's a chance against France because they don't have Intermac.
Yes.
And they don't have a crowd.
Yes.
That's why I think that's why there's a chance. And I don't think we played as badly against them in the autumn as people think we did. That game, I think, was all right.
Yeah,
I think we were all right in that game. We held our own.
We were in it.
Yeah. The Ireland game, I can't read Ireland. That's the bottom line with it. I don't know where Ireland are at the minute. I think they're in a very strange place where they have a very old squad and a very young squad. They've got a lot of depth, but the depth isn't necessarily a strength. It can be a weakness because they bring in different players every week.
Yeah,
and they don't really seem to have that much consistency of selection. And they've still got Johnny Sexton taped together playing 10. I think if you could, they're there to be beaten. There is that we could beat Ireland.
Yeah,
I just said that
like every time.
We say that every time. I know. And every time we lose to them.
Before the World Cup, we've said that every single time we've been like, Ireland are there to be taken. I've literally sat with Ireland fans and bet money with them saying Ireland are there to be taken, and they continue to frustrate me.
I think this time, though, the difference this Six Nations for me is that if we lose the games, we're not going to lose them in the same old Scotland way we would lose matches. We're going to lose them in the way that England lose matches in the Six Nations, or Wales lose matches in the Six Nations. That you're in the game for 70 minutes, 60 minutes. Yeah. You're in the game for most of the game, and then the other team just pull away. I don't think we're going to lose. I don't think there's going to be any heroic defeats in the same way of, oh, well, we turned up and we gave our best effort. I think the defeats and this. I think there's something that we as Scotland fans, which is what we are here, need to do and kind of make almost that psychological switch to say, we are not going to be brave losers anymore. But there is a kind of shift that you have to make in mentality with that, because it's going to be more disappointing when you're in the game for 60, 70 minutes and you throw it away, as opposed to we turned up and we tried really hard. And we'll give England a good run every couple of years when they're at home, and that's what we're aiming for. The squad are capable of more.
Yep.
And I think there'll be some narrow defeats, but we can't get too downhearted about that. We should be pleased that we are losing games narrowly.
Yeah, we have to. Yeah, that's it. We absolutely have to. We have to be in games to. We have to start to close that gap, and everyone's moving forward, with the exception of Italy, who are clearly not moving forward, and they're not. That's a whole separate series of podcasts on its own. But the fact that Scotland are now we're now a one-score team. I would describe it as, in that we're probably 7 points. You know, if you look at the betting odds with maybe us against England, it'll be around about 7 points potentially. We're a one-score team, when previously maybe we were a 10-point team, or even maybe more than that for these bigger games. So we're now getting closer to it. And yeah, I don't think we're going to see necessarily the same fastest rugby in the world, throwing the ball about like lunatics, but we're not going to be, we don't have the personnel to play the game that England and Ireland, and to a certain extent Wales under Gatland played, and we're not going to play that dull, crunching, attritional rugby, but we are going to have to be smart. And I think Scotland fans have to accept that the ball's going to be kicked a lot more. We are going to be, you know, we're not going to be running it from everywhere. We are going to have to be smart. And, you know, I just hope we can get behind that.
Yeah. What's your prediction then? Are you more optimistic than me, or?
Do you know what? No, I think three wins is probably, like, again, I think it's head, heart, and arse, really, isn't it? And I think if using your head, you would absolutely say 3 wins is probably, like, 3 wins is a very good Six Nations actually for us, given the quality of France, have shown, given that England are England and, you know, continue to just churn out utter monsters to play Eddie Jones's horrific brand of rugby, and given that they've still got Farrell, who, you know, still hasn't been locked up, sadly. You know, Ireland are a team that are totally in transition. You don't know where they're going, you know, what's going to happen. And they seem to have, you know, you always get those bogey teams. Like, normally it's a team that's a lesser team than you. And I would argue, you know, the way we've maybe we played into Ireland's strengths a lot of times, and we've not turned up. And we should be beating them. I think that's where we're at. We should be beating them.
I think we would have beaten them at home this year. That was last year, 2020. We should have beaten Ireland at home.
Yeah.
When you look back at that game, so yeah.
Oh no, it was one of those. It was really frustrating, but frustrating's okay because we were in there. And then, you know, obviously you've got Wales. Wales are a shocking state just now, and you know, you say this, they'll probably go and Grand Slam it now because they're so. You just can't read what's going to happen with Wales, but they have a lot of problems down there. They've got issues with, you know, the fact that Biggar's still like the main man at 10 is just hilarious to me. I've like, given that Wayne Pivac's try to get them to play rugby, but he's picking one of the least rugby playing 10s since Ronan O'Gara at 10. It's a great effort, really.
Yeah, I think that's fair enough. So we're going three,
possibly 4. I think like in an ideal world, we beat England by 4 points this weekend, and then we cruise to a Grand Slam.
I think that that game will be the making, and we'll preview that on Thursday. That game's going to be the making of Scotland Six Nations.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
Very quick one. Jordan Goose Lion says 750 to 1 outright winner for Italy is worth £5. Jordan, I can give you a number of things that you'd be better spending £5 on.
I can tell you, Jordan, that my sister is not going to be pleased with you if you put a £5 on Italy to win the Six Nations, because Jordan's actually my brother-in-law, and I can tell you outright, Jordan, £5 on Italy is a waste of a £5. I will bet you a £5 they do not.
Please let us know in the comments for the rest of the podcast. What should John's brother-in-law spend the £5 on? What better? I think he could buy. We get 4 sausage rolls in Greg's for £1.
Yeah.
So that's 5 bags of 4 sausage rolls.
That would be a good night in, actually.
That'd be good. You could freeze them. There we go. Hey, what can you best spend £5 on?
Well done, Jody. Well done.
There we go.
How much of so I think he could possibly get 1 leg of a set of Manscaped underwear for his
there
£5.
you go. You could get that exactly. You could, with 20% off, you could get yourself refined the scent of Manscaped. We nice surprise there. So we're going to move on anyway. Let's move on from sorting out John's sister's marriage. We'll move on and do this.
Well, we're low tie and we're low blow, single, get back on in the speedos, but I just wanna know, did you see the legend that's Doogie Donnelly?
Yes, it's Where's Doogie Donnelly. This is the section of the podcast where we ask you to tell us who you have seen out and about that is tangentially linked to the world of Scottish rugby. We've had one that is not linked at all, but I liked it quite a lot. And this one is from our super secret Facebook page. This is Craig Manson. He says, I know my Where's Doogie Donnelly isn't a rugby player, but I met Craig Charles, lister from Red Dwarf, at a petrol station at Marks & Spencer's just outside Altrincham near Manchester a couple of months ago. We were in a queue waiting to get into the store. He turned around and looked straight at me. All right, man, was all I could muster. He spent a lot of time looking at the oven chips, not that I was following him. Now, what does it come to in a man's life when you're in a service station, Marks & Spencer's, looking at oven chips? I mean, it's not where I buy my oven chips. I mean, Craig did point out that this is close to where they filmed Coronation Street. So,
I mean, I think it takes it. It's interesting, isn't it? It's the price of oven chips in a service station, particularly a Marks and Spencer's service station. The price of oven chips is going to be pretty chunky, eh? So it takes a certain caliber of person to be able to afford that. However, it also takes a certain caliber of person to have to do that. So there's a debate as to which part of the economic divide does Craig Charles fall on with regards to his Marks and Spencer's oven chips from a service station.
What's the strangest thing you bought in a service station, John?
That's a question, Cam. Let me think about that. I'll get back to you. There's been some strange things.
Yeah.
Have you got one?
I gave one of those chewable toothbrushes a go once.
Nice. I mean,
I've had disconnected. Yeah, I lost you for a minute there. I think I broke you at the thought of a chewable toothbrush.
Yeah, no, that's for the best. I mean, the caliber of what they sell in these service stations has significant. I've always been a bit weirded out though that they sell like booze in these service stations. Like you're like, I'm on a drive for the whole motorway, and you walk in and you're like, okay, so I can get a packet of beer. Okay, cool, right.
One of the most terrifying things you can do is be in a coach on a motorway. And we did this on a work trip once. We were being bussed from a train station to a conference centre, and we played "What's the Lorry Driver Doing?" because we were at the same height as the cabs. And some of the things the lorry drivers were doing were frankly concerning. One guy was making himself a cup of tea from a kettle. Another guy was watching telly.
Yep.
Somebody was reading The Sun on the steering wheel of the.
Yep, I remember seeing some. My dad was a lorry driver, and I remember seeing him do like being able to take a 2-litre bottle of Coca-Cola, open it, and then drink it whilst still steering like a 30-ton lorry. It was quite remarkable.
Yeah. We've got a couple more Where's Doogie Donnelly's. Bruce Colley had two. Now, there was one before Christmas that I missed, Bruce, so apologies to this. He said he saw Al Strockosh in Sainsbury's by Murrayfield, decked out head to toe in Embra stash, and he was looking extremely fuming at how busy it was. Now, you see these COVID adverts where they say, you've got the people on masks saying, I wish I'd kept my distance or whatever. It should just be public information films of Al Strockosh just telling people to stay at home, and then everybody would just stay at home.
Stay at home.
And that would be it. You'd have 100% compliance.
104% compliance.
Bruce also said he dropped his girlfriend off at work at the Royal Infirmary in Edinburgh, and there was someone in full Scotland training kit waiting by the doors, couldn't get close enough to read the monogram on the jacket, and they were wearing a mask, so the mystery remains unsolved. Now, normally the players get treated at a private clinic, so it's got to be someone who's visiting someone. So we don't know.
That would have been, yeah. I think that would probably have been, it sounds like it was a visit, because they would be over, particularly if they're over in Edinburgh, they would be at the Spire, 100%.
So that's why if you see anybody out and about, even though we're in lockdown, if you see anyone breaching lockdown, we're quite, tell on them. We can't. We're not the police, but we'll happily repeat who's been breaching lockdown. Let us know.
Remember we dobbed in
Ryan Wilson in outside of his health board area in St Abs.
Yep. He get dobbed in. That's right. We are snitches.
Yeah.
Unashamed snitches.
COVID. On that note, let's move on to this. Yes, it's Hands in the Ruck, the Any Other Business section of the podcast. We've got quite a few on Twitter, so thank you everybody who's contributed to this. Mark Camburn starts us off with Ian Hayes' microphone. It's not loud enough. He said, I can never really hear Ian. Maybe some of the manscaping dust can stretch to a new mic for Ian. I think it's just I think he slouches. I think it's his
style, yeah.
I think it's just the way that he. I think it's his posture. Maybe we'll get him a better chair.
I mean, maybe so once we can, maybe I'll take him to the pub and we can do some. So we'll do some projection exercises. Get him to speak to the back of the room. It's
hard to project when you're drinking a flagon of cider.
You project something anyway. Did you happen to see his big game that he was hunting? He got a delivery from Old Scrumpy. 20-litre box of cider arrived, and he took a picture of himself with a Nerf gun, having claimed that he'd hunted it down.
Yeah. So we're being sponsored by Manscaped at the moment. We are all open to cider sponsorship as well. Although maybe John and I will keep that to ourselves for Ian's own sake.
For his own benefit, yeah, definitely.
Dermot Gormley says his Hands in the Ruck is everything. It's all hands in the ruck all the time. That's fair. Grant Grieve says Eddie Jones claiming Scottish rugby players were his heroes in the 80s. Yeah, he's just taking a different tact with these pre-match interviews, is to say I used to like John Jeffries. It's kind of a backward compliment because I used to like it when they did a fast rucking game.
Yeah,
you don't do that anymore. You're not good anymore.
We should all really just remember that. I think because the Six Nations has kind of sneaked up on us, we'd all forgotten that Eddie Jones existed. And I think we all need to just take a wee second to remember that Eddie is Eddie, and we all should ignore him.
No, I think we touched on this last time I did the podcast. I don't know if you guys talked about it. There's a really good article that Alan Dimmock's done on rugby and wrestling for Rugby World magazine, where he's gone and he spoke to. We did an interview with someone who was recruiting to WWE, and I think off the back of that, Alan Dimmock's run with that for the Rugby World, and he was speaking to Triple H. He's spoken to a couple of guys who are former rugby players who are involved in WWE and doing really well. And what Alan was saying was his big takeaway was that rugby needs to lean in more to its characters. And I think the respect element of rugby, John, kind of stops us from doing that. And this idea that when you're off the pitch, you shake hands, and nobody's allowed to hate anybody in rugby. And I think it's maybe clicked with me a bit. That's what Eddie Jones does. He's happy to play the heel. He's happy to be the bad guy. It serves him his purpose in that it kind of deflects attention away from his team. But it also sells rugby games, and that's something that Alan Dimmock says. That sells. That's what sells in WWE. That's what sells in other sports. You need characters. I think Mario Toji's starting to do very well with that. In the same way, kind of in a Marcus Rashford vein, that he started doing podcasts talking about social issues, and it broadens the scope outside of rugby. We haven't got any. I don't think we've got any characters like that within Scotland. Maybe I'd Ryan Wilson to an extent.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
it's got to be double. I think it has to be a bit like with WWE. The idea that you're either the heel or you're the hero, and you've got this persona that you then project has to be coupled with talent. And I'm not that's not a way of saying that Ryan Wilson's talentless, but it has to be you have to be the big player to do that.
Yeah, particularly if you're going to go down that heel route, you have to have big personality, big. You have to almost, you know, to use the wrestling thing, people have to believe that you are good enough to be the best, because then you might win. And that's that kind of, you know, so then you're doubly hated because it's, oh no, we don't want the bad guy to win, but they might win. So yeah, you really have to be able to back up that talent. And it's where guys like, you know, you say Ryan Wilson's an interesting one. He maybe didn't necessarily pull that off. You maybe look at someone like Jim Hamilton, who seems to believe that he's, you know, Triple H, but he certainly wasn't. So, you know, it's, yeah, I totally agree. I think there has to be talent there. But there's a thing as well in rugby where we talk about we don't have characters in rugby, but we're in very different times to what we have been before. And, you know, characters come in all shapes and sizes. And, you know, juggling tennis rackets is a character.
Yeah. I mean, Finn Russell's probably the most marketable Scottish rugby player or character at the moment, and he does that. He leans into we know he leans into his persona.
Oh yeah,
of the kind of, you know, the idiot savant kind of guy. You know, that's his whole thing, and you know that's we need more of that. I think to sell the game of rugby outside of rugby, you need more of that.
100%
transcend the sport.
It's that idea, isn't it, of just the final point in that is, you know, if you're a young kid looking at a player and you're seeing stage managed, bland players, if you're putting Chris Harris up to every young player and saying this is a professional rugby player, you're probably going to lose a lot of kids because they're going to go, oh, it doesn't look very fun. Whereas if you put Finn Russell doing mad stuff, then, you know, kids get interested, and that's what you need.
Yeah,
that's no disrespect to Chris Harris, by the way.
No, because he did do a nice wee chippy tweet after a player didn't get cited for.
That's true. That was I liked the salt on that. It was good.
It was good. Yeah, I mean, there are players with potential for that, but like you said, to market the game of rugby outside of people who normally follow it, that was my hands in the rock. Actually, it was Ugo Monyard. He comes around and Ugo Monyard kind of said, "Oh, rugby needs a game, a computer game to market itself."
Yep.
I think to a certain extent he's right, but I kind of got. I don't think my hands in the rock because I don't think you can make a good rugby computer game, because I think the sport's too complicated to lend itself to a game that's going to be attractive to anybody other than people who already follow rugby.
Like rugby, yeah. No, I know.
So, people have said, a couple of people when I posted that on Twitter said, you know, what about Joe Madden? And it's like, but that's, you know, it's very stop-start, and it's not the same. It's not, rugby's supposed to be a fluid game played fluidly. You could do a Joe Madden thing, but you'd have to stop at every ruck, pause the game, and then spend 20 minutes deciding what you're going to do next. Now, you can do that in a game of a computer simulation of American football, but you can't. It would take you hours to complete a rugby game that way. Yeah,
if you're picking every breakdown, you're setting plays, you're setting runners, you know, it would be incredibly complicated.
Yeah, you could possibly do a rugby management game.
There was one. There's been a couple, actually.
There's been a couple, but they've never really taken off in the same way as the football games. But I think what they've tried to do is go into complicated. I think the reason people invest in Football Manager is because a lot of people were playing it when it was Championship Manager, when it was just a very simple,
straightforward
transfer players in and out, straightforward game. The game I think that has got the potential is a game of sevens. You could build a very good rugby computer game around the game of sevens.
Yeah. So there is a version of sevens in Rugby Challenge, which I'm
Right.
I'm a player of Rugby Challenge, which is there was the two branches of rugby. There wasn't very many rugby games for quite some time after EA had the license back in the late noughties. Rugby 2008 is probably still the kind of benchmark of rugby games, but Rugby Challenge, or John Olomu Rugby Challenge, as it was for the first one, is a decent game. And in the third one, there is a sevens thing, which works in some ways, but it is too easy. So the game itself is kind of flawed in that it's too easy to offload and it's too easy to steal the ball at rucks.
Yeah.
So you basically just wait, you tackle the man and you go straight in. Oh, gone. So it is a wee bit easy.
I think you could build on it though, and I think you could make it harder. But yeah, that would be the way if you're going to attract people outside of rugby to play an exciting video game, would be to do that. Speaking of sevens, actually, the just as a side note, it's going to be interesting to see what happens with the Sevens circuit given the current goings on in Hong Kong.
Yes.
Given the people having to flee for their lives to avoid persecution. I'm surprised that World Rugby haven't at least announced that they're reviewing that.
Yeah, well, it wouldn't be the first time that World Rugby has been slow to react to geopolitical problems.
Well, yeah, of course, because of course one of the legs is in Dubai. Let's not forget. So,
well, yes, exactly. And as long as the money is coming in, let's not worry too much about anything that goes on out with of the sporting bubble. Rugby are not alone in that, we know, given that football are about to have a World Cup in the Middle East, and given that Formula One have taken the sweet desert dollar every single time they can.
Hashtag respect, unless it's banning women from driving.
Exactly. Yes, because that's...
And it's for adultery and all sorts of other horrendous things.
That's just clubhouse banter, Cammy. I'm going to get letters for that. Yes.
Last one before I come to yours is Johnny Rose says his hands in the ruck as English pundits saying England are under the radar as if they're suddenly underdogs. I don't know, they're under the radar and that nobody's played rugby for about 4 months.
Yeah, that's the Saracens thing is quite I know it's lunatics.
What's had its hands in your ruck then, John?
So a little bit a follow up from the kind of announcement of the Scotland squad and the sort of coverage of things since then. Again, and I've done this before, and I'll continue. I make no apologies about bleating about this every single time. Johan van der Merwe, Jacob van der Walt, Ollie Kebble, amongst others, are all Scottish now. Okay, They are not South African. They are not what we're saying, Scott Box or Scott Bok Jocks or any of that. They are Scottish internationals now, and whether fans agree with the route they've taken or whether fans agree with moving on after getting international qualification or whatever, it does not matter a jot, because they are going to be wearing the blues of the blue shirt of Scotland. They're going to be representing us, all of us, yes, all of us, which includes people of many different nationalities who've chosen to come and live in Scotland and be part of Scottish culture. So therefore, they are Scottish. I just hope that, like, the vast majority of fans know this and love this about Scotland, that we are a multicultural, diverse society that takes in everyone. If you want to be Scottish, you are Scottish. Some of our less open-minded fans are maybe not seeing that quite as clearly, and I would like to remind.
Who knew that racists would have a problem with white South Africans coming and playing for Scotland?
I know, right? I know.
You would think that the racists would be pleased that it was white South Africans coming in to play for Scotland. You know, surely that would tick a lot of boxes for them.
That's it, yeah, I know. And you would think that, a bit of success, he's a white South African, but he's good at rugby, so it's fine. You would think that would be okay.
The right kind of immigrant, John.
So yeah.
That's what these people would think. Yeah, no, I completely agree with that. I think it's perfectly okay to have concerns about the way that players are recruited to play for Scotland, and it's fine to talk about that. But once someone is selected for Scotland, they're Scottish and they're playing for their Scotland international and they're Scottish, and we need to accept that and move on. You can still have the debate about how they arrived at that. You can still talk about whether or not there are enough pathways within Scotland, whether or not Scottish young players are getting enough prominence. Those are all perfectly valid points, but calling people the Scott box and saying the South Africa,
it's so disrespectful.
Even things like I just within the press, it's like, seeing something like South African born Scotland international. It's like the South African born bit is completely, it's irrelevant. It doesn't add anything to it other than a snidey remark.
That's it in a nutshell. It is snidey because how far do you want to go with that? Do we, for every country in the world, do we talk about, so England's Tongan-born number 8, or do we talk about Scotland's Leicester-born number 7, Hamish Watson? Or how far do we go? These guys are representing their country now, and that's it.
I think we should go all the way, John. I think we should reference it right back to people's as far back as they can trace their ancestry.
That's it. Yeah.
You have unwieldy paragraphs saying out people's backgrounds. Anglo-Saxon, Norman, Viking.
The third son of Richard of the house, whatever. We could definitely.
Scotland international, and then you move on.
I think we've got a whole new bit of wiki fun that we can have there.
Yeah. There's a wonderful song everyone wants to listen to that was released just after the New Year. It's called Coming Over Here it's the Asian Dub Foundation have teamed up with Stuart Lee. And they've spliced up one of his routines about the Anglo-Saxons coming over here, improving society, adding to our language. We're getting woke again, John. We're going to get bad reviews.
Oh, right. Racists, Exeter Chiefs. What else can we talk about?
The one thing I was going to move on very quickly, one kind of other thing that's had its hands in my ruck as we reached the hour and 30 mark of a podcast, I thought we'd only last for 40 minutes. Because
every time.
Here we go. This is Dougie Lowe says, I had a long Facebook argument with a guy from Hoyk who says we should only ever pick Scottish-born players. I asked him if he celebrated the 99 Grand Slam captained by Aylesbury-born David Soul, still waiting for his reply. There you go.
Case, point, sealed argument. Let's stop being racist, people.
Hoyk really Scottish?
Well, that's a whole podcast in itself.
that's just a bit of borders banter for you there. The thing that's had its hands in my ruck, the other thing that kind of slightly bothered me this week is the team bias thing is getting to me a little bit with the Scotland selections. And I get everybody wants a favourite player from their favourite club to play for Scotland, but sometimes it oversteps into absolute blatant favouritism. The whole idea, any suggestion that Jaco van der Walt is better than Finn Russell is nonsense. I think the suggestion even that Jaco van der Walt is a better player than Adam Hastings, I struggle with. Now, I'm not, let's be clear, John has nailed his colours to the mast. I get accused of bias from both sides. Aside from serving Scotland well, I really don't care about Glasgow or Edinburgh other than I wish them the best of luck, and I like it when both sides do well. I'm not particularly invested in either. I've tried my best, but I can't get invested. The issue I can say, like hand on harsh, Adam Hastings has the potential to be a better rugby player than Jaco van der Walt. That's not to say Jaco van der Walt is not a very good rugby player. He did very well in his debut for Scotland, but Adam Hastings is demonstrably a better rugby player than Jaco van der Walt. And there's a couple of other examples. I think the Chris Harris one with a 13 bugs me. I think there's a lot of people who just can't see out of their own little kind of like fiefdoms of this. This is my favourite player, and I think he should play. And I think it bugs me a little bit. I think we should all be able to see a little bit broader.
I do not disagree in the slightest with that, Cammy. I think you know fine well that I like to nail my colours to the mast with players that I like. I have also had my say regarding players that maybe I don't fancy as much. Now, there does tend to be a fairly linear approach to that, in that usually the players I like reside somewhere close to Glasgow Airport, and the other ones maybe don't. But I have also, and many of you will, you know fine well that I think Hamish Watson is actually a god. So I've spoken at length about the quality of players across the piece, and I don't judge a player based on their club. And I've already said in this that I don't think Hugh Jones should start above Chris Harris, because I think Chris Harris is doing really well. I love Hugh Jones. Absolutely love him so much, but that's not the decision that is right. And I agree with you. I think some people get blinkers on about the quality of their own players, particularly the club sides, right? We do it at Glasgow, Edinburgh fans do it as well, and we get into all these wee debates about this player, that player, and stuff like that. But ultimately, it's right. Who's the best player for Scotland? Who's the best player to be wearing that shirt for Scotland? The club game is great, and we all really enjoy it. But ultimately, and I say club game, sorry, I should clarify, the pro club game
Yep.
before I get shouted at. It's great that we've got that to have that wee bit of rivalry that's completely manufactured and doesn't actually exist, but it gives us something to rip each other a wee bit about, and we rip into each other's players. But ultimately, I don't think Blair Kinghorn's a bad player. I don't think that, Grant Gilchrist is nearly as bad as the amateur dramatics that I put on and suggest that he might be. Do I think he's better than Scott Cummings or Johnny Gray? Absolutely not. But I don't think he's a bad player.
Mm-hmm. No, and I think that's it. And I think yes, I've seen it from both, and I will stress, I've seen it from both Edinburgh and Glasgow fans suggesting that players who are demonstrably not as good as people are saying they are should be ahead of their rivals. And I'm sure Edinburgh fans would love to have 15 Edinburgh players starting for Scotland, and I'm sure Glasgow fans would love to have 15 Glasgow players starting for Scotland, but that's not going to happen.
No.
And I think just a little bit of a broader appreciation outside of your own little bubble would enhance the debate no end. Now, before we go, very quick, thank you very much to Danny, who said his hands in the ruck was folk who, after every picture of Edinburgh's new ground is posted, they mention the pillars. So Kingston has pillars and Scotstoun has pillars. Sandy Park has pillars. What are people expecting the Emirates? So, yeah. He said we're a middle of the table team who have won nothing but the 1872 Cup occasionally, and that's a 50-50. Now, stress, he's an Edinburgh fan, so I'm going to leave you on that note, Edinburgh fans. I don't have a problem with pillars. I used to go and follow Berwick Rangers, and there's all sorts of pillars in the way. There's a metal mesh between you and the away fans.
That was a blessing, given that what you would have been watching otherwise.
Exactly. But that's it for us for this week. I say for this week, we will be back on Thursday, hopefully, all being well, for a very quick flash pod once we know what the team is for the England game.
I think that's got potential. I think we need to come up with a better name for it, because flash pod kind of maybe is one for my OnlyFans.
Yes, if anyone's got any suggestions for what we should call it, then please let us know. Please don't. If you've got a name for John's OnlyFans account, then let us know that as well.
Bring it, yeah, I know. Hands in the Rick was what I was going with, but
for the minute, don't forget to sign up to our Patreon, Scottish Rugby blog. Patreon.com/Scottish Rugby Podcast. Go to manscaped.com, enter SRP at the checkout for your 20% off. Buy yourself some sexy
underwear.
Buy yourself sexy aftershave. Treat your significant other to a lovely waft over the Valentine's dinner takeaway. Waft, is that the right word?
It's a bit extreme, Cam. I'll be honest. It's a bit extreme. Like, maybe not waft, maybe just a subtle scent over the candlelit dinner table with with your steak dinner sitting there. Yeah.
That's why I'm not advertising, John.
Subtle. No wafting, Cam.
What? John's asking if is it a fiver? I'm sure John will spare you some of his. It's going spared, Jordan.
Yeah. Rumours, Jordan, that this is what you're getting for Christmas, mate, are completely unfounded.
Anyway, for the moment, it is goodbye from me and goodbye from John.
Hey, folks.